Welcome everybody. New World, a new MMO coming this spring, brought to us by Amazon Game Studios and Double Helix Games. I recently got my first taste of this game during the pre-alpha, and since then I have been hooked. So I made the healthy gamer choice and played 100 plus hours during the pre-alpha test phase so I could write a half-decent review of the game for you guys past the game's tutorial. I was not able to participate in Keep Sieges, nor did I get a chance to participate in the higher-end PvE content either. That being said, I did do some of the PvE content that is just scaled to what my character's level was, and of course I did a lot of open-world PvP. I just didn't get to enjoy the siege aspect of it. And finally, I want to say that I didn't abuse any XP bugs that were in the game, so I didn't power level faster than I should have been able to, so I think I had a fairly authentic first go at New World, and that's kind of what I wanted to experience for the sake of this review. So right out of the gate, New World feels like a sandbox MMO. When you finish the tutorial, you're pretty much thrown into the world and you can do whatever you want. This feels a lot like RuneScape in a sense because you're not really given much direction save one questline to follow that will eventually lead you to your main story questline, which branches off all over the game. Essentially, you're not forced to really do anything. As soon as you start playing the game, you can choose the path for your character and be successful at the things that you want to do. If you just want to be a crafter, that's totally viable. If you don't want to do any crafting and just go out and kill things, that's totally viable too. If you just want to go out there and collect some flowers and sell them for gold to decorate your home, that is also a viable playstyle in New World. You gain XP for doing every single activity in this game, and that includes collecting and refining resources into crafted items. There aren't really any in-game shops to buy any kinds of materials or weapons outside of the PvP token vendors, so the economy is pretty much 100% player-driven in New World as well, giving a lot of value to every single resource that you collect. And like RuneScape, this adds value to doing a variety of different crafting and skilling activities in the game. And finally, New World has the option for open world PvP. You can simply toggle on and off your PvP status when you're in a safe zone, and then whenever you leave a safe zone, you will now be able to fight other players that are in a different faction than you. We'll get more into PvP later on in the review, but something I wanted to mention right away is that PvP is not a forced game mode. So you have the option whether you want to participate in it or not. So we're going to start off with the big one, combat in New World. New World has a very different combat system from any MMO that I've ever played before. It feels a lot like Dark Souls. It's very visceral and intimate, and it rewards timing and good strategy while you play. You have to aim everything that you attack with, including your melee attacks, so movement and spacing is very important, as well as aim in general when fighting at a distance. You can have up to 3 different weapons equipped, and you can use a variety of different weapons in New World, offering you quite a bit of flexibility for the style of combat that you want to play. This is definitely an area where I would love to see Amazon add some more content, as more weapons would not only add more fun to combat in general, but just greatly build on the buildcraft in this game too. While in combat, you have 3 different abilities for each weapon that you can use, and they all have cooldowns. Now, the cooldowns are shared based on your ability slot. So if you have something slotted in your one skill on one bar and you swap to a different weapon after using it on your first bar, you still have to wait out the cooldown from your first weapon. I know at first glance this can seem kind of counterintuitive, but I understand why Amazon did it for how combat flows in this game, because essentially if they didn't, it would just turn into an ability spam game once you hit a high enough level. But I would love to hear what you guys think about this part of the game. The first thing that caught me about New World's combat is that enemies are strong. If you fight enemies by yourself and they're the same level as you, you cannot pull a lot of them because they will tear you apart, especially early on in the game. Now, this doesn't mean that New World is necessarily a really hard game, but combat just feels different from a more traditional MMO where you're just pulling massive amount of mobs and then just mowing them down with AoEs. You don't have AoEs in New World that you can spam at all, so killing a group of enemies is very intimate and you pick them down one at a time. Enemy monsters also move very quickly, so it's hard to get away from them if you end up pulling a fight that's a little bit out of your reach. And on top of it, it is really hard to heal in the middle of combat as well. This essentially leads to an MMO where active defense is incredibly important. You want to make sure that you're dodging and blocking incoming attacks and paying a lot of attention to what your opponents are doing so you can react accordingly to it. There's a decent variety of mobs in the game right now, and they all have a variety of different attacks, so it makes them fairly unpredictable to fight depending on what you're fighting. I think with how the combat system just feels in New World, there's a lot of potential for Amazon to build some really interesting NPCs to fight. There's very little animation canceling or clipping in the game, so the game doesn't end up feeling too terribly click intensive to play. I would just say there's a lot more focus on the aim and timing aspect of the game versus hitting abilities super quickly. And lastly, it's very important to have your 3 food buffs up during combat. Your health does not regenerate while you're fighting naturally, so having your food buffs up will allow your health to regenerate during the course of the fight. It's not too terribly fast, but over a long fight, it definitely goes a long way. Now, Amazon had advertised this game as having a skill-based combat system, and I definitely have to agree. The mix of shooter and brawler, like a Dark Souls style of game, is a really fun mix for me, and I personally had a great time doing both PvE and PvP combat in this game. It definitely has a very unique feel that I haven't had in an MMO before. Now, this leads me into PvP. PvP, again, is a faction-based system in New World. You choose one of 3 factions, and then you can fight the other 2. You can flag yourself for PvP in the safe zone, like I mentioned before, and you also have the option to participate in wars or keep sieges when you are a high enough level. You can participate in these keep sieges if you are below level 50, but it's kind of a draw to get in, so you don't have a very good chance of making it unless you are the required level. But again, PvP is optional and you're not forced to participate in it. You aren't even forced to pick a faction if you don't want to. Now, I found PvP to be hectic and a lot of fun. Just like regular combat, it is very aim and timing based, and movement and spacing is incredibly important when you fight another player. All projectiles have weight, and of course it takes them time to reach their target, so at a distance, movement becomes an incredibly effective way to dodge incoming projectiles. And finally, it is near impossible again to heal yourself if you are taking pressure, so movement is the only way for you to reliably break some distance and pull off a heal with a potion. I definitely think there is a very high skill ceiling for PvP in New World, and I think that there is a lot of things that we don't know about in the game yet. The PvP meta will definitely establish itself over time, and we'll see what is considered underpowered or overpowered. As it sits right now, I think something we have to remember is that a lot of people don't know the obvious counters to things, so it's hard for us to have a good discussion about balance in PvP this early because we're just not aware of everything that we can do in the game. Long story short, during almost 50 hours of PvP, I did not die to a hatchet stun lock once. I was also in a light armor build. My favorite part about PvP, though, was just open world PvP. I had a blast venturing out into the world to do the PvP-specific quests and just go out there and collect resources with PvP on, just because there was always a chance that I could get into a fight, and I live for PvP in these kinds of games. Now, something that I did really like as well about PvP is the fact that there is a PvP-only quest system. There are certain faction quests that you have to be in PvP mode to do, and they offer you quite a lot more rewards than all of the other quests that you have access to in the game. This is one of the best ways to level up your character, especially early on, as well as get your hands on some really great gear at the beginning of the game. The PvP quest just created an incentive for people to want to be in PvP mode and take that extra bit of risk for that extra reward. In my opinion, this was a strong part of World PvP for me, but it's definitely something I would love to see Amazon build upon. I think PvP could benefit a lot from not just a quest system that gives you better rewards in PvP, but perhaps you get 10% better resource return or 10% more XP as long as you have PvP mode on. Just adding that little bit of extra incentive could bring a lot of life into open world PvP. As it sits right now, I do think on launch that open world PvP will be quite a popular activity, and I think there was a lot of players that were looking for New World to be that open world PvP game that they really wanted to play. So I definitely think there is the potential for Amazon to deliver on that promise still. Now, to touch a little bit on stability, I did find that the game ran quite well. I did run into some lag issues at times. It was mostly when I was in a very, very busy town, but it was nothing too terribly serious, only some lag spikes here and there. The game did crash on me a handful of times as well. But I'll be honest, for 100 hours of gameplay and a game in alpha state, it ran quite smooth. So now let's talk about another incredibly strong point of New World, and that is the crafting system. Crafting in New World is amazing. This is one of the best crafting systems that I think I have ever seen in an MMO. There are some things that I'm not the biggest fan of, but the way the crafting system is set up, it is very rewarding and it's very fun to level up your individual crafting skills. Every single activity that you do in the game has a crafting skill associated with it. In total, you have 16 different skills that you can level up for crafting, 4 of them being collection skills, 5 of them being material refining skills, and then the last few skills being the production or crafting skills to create the item at the end. The collection aspect is really well executed. Resources are not randomly placed all over the map. They are specifically placed in certain locations based on where that resource would naturally occur. And the varying regions in the game offer varying kinds of resources. There's literally only one spot in the game where you can get a reliable amount of oil. Now, this resource distribution is important because it brings a lot of difference to the varying regions of the world. There are certain parts of the world where it's better to go and level your engineering, and then there are certain parts of the world where it's better to go and level your weaponsmithing because you have easier access to the resources that you require based on that location. This was a huge win for me because not only did I enjoy setting my own goals and crafting routes, but traveling to the different towns and seeing what I could do there effectively and what maybe was better to train somewhere else really added that feeling of variety to the world. Not only did the areas look different, but they played different too. I really like how they set up the refining of materials as well, because in order to make high-level materials, you are required to use low-level materials in them. This just means that there is value in every single material, and low-level mats won't be completely valueless, but will instead retain their value throughout the course of the game. Now, when you craft an item, there is a fair bit of randomness attached to your craft. There's a certain range of gear score that each item can have when you craft it. As you continue to level up your crafting profession, you can create stronger and stronger gear from the same base materials. This will incrementally go up each level, and it allows you to create really strong low-level gear if you're a high-level crafter, which you could then give to a new friend who is just starting the game to make them feel a lot more powerful. There also doesn't seem to be a limit on the levels for your crafting profession, so going way past the required level to craft, let's say, the tier 5 gear is actually beneficial because you will craft stronger and stronger gear as you continue to level up your crafting profession. I really like how this system is set up because it allows people to quickly get their hands on the ability to craft tier 5 gear, but if you want to make that extra 5-10% value in your gear, you can put the grind in as well. This appeals to both types of players from this spectrum. Now, you can of course invest more resources to increase the chances that you get the item with the trait and the score that you're looking for, but at the end of the day, crafting will always have a bit of a random aspect to it. Overall, crafting was amazing in this game. It felt like an upgraded version of RuneScape, to be honest, where you just interact with your environment and you make the materials out of the environment that you just interacted with. The ability to cut down any tree in the game and mine out huge boulders just adds to the sense of the impact that your character can have on the environment around you. And even during early to mid-game, crafting retained a ton of value. In fact, if you want to create a new character and want to have really strong weapons at a lower level, maxing out your crafts early on is probably the best way to do it. Now let's talk a little bit about character progression on the combat side of things. You have quite a few options on how you want to build your character, but essentially everybody in the game has access to the exact same things, and you just choose what you want to specialize in. Eventually, though, you could completely max out every single skill that your character has access to. Your character's build is essentially which weapons you choose and how you choose to invest your points in those weapon skill lines. You can also spend your attribute points on a variety of different things to buff your character's base stats as well. I like that this game is fairly straightforward with buildcraft and doesn't hide any information from you. It gives you the information about what the different stats do right away, so you kind of know what you're getting into when you're looking at investing the stats into different departments. You also get to choose from 6 different active weapon abilities for each weapon and a huge variety of different passives. You can only use 3 of these active abilities per a weapon, and the slot shares a cooldown spot with all of the other abilities slotted in that spot for your different weapons too. So since you can only equip 3 weapons, you could have a maximum of 9 different active skills at any one time. Gear scores are very straightforward in determining how powerful a piece of equipment is. and each piece of armor that you put on has a weight tied to it. The amount of weight that your armor weighs that you're wearing determines how fast or slow you will dodge attacks. If you have the light weight, you will actually be able to roll dodge. If you have a medium weight, you take a medium hop, and if you are heavy armor, you will have a very small hop. Essentially, the heavier your armor is, the more protection it provides at the cost of movement. All in all, I didn't find buildcraft to be overly complex in this game at all. That being said, I still found that I had the freedom to play the style I was looking for. This is again a part of the game that I would love to see Amazon build upon. Adding more weapons would go a long way into increasing the amount of builds that you have access to in the game. And of course, there are a lot of different armor traits that even affect specific weapon abilities that they could add into the game too, to continue to add more variety for the already existing weapons. Now, let's talk a little bit about questing. It is not a strong part of this game. There's very little voice acting, and the quests don't have a lot of story to them at all. In New World, I think that quests are solely here for the function that they serve. They provide kind of a marker for people to go out and follow, kind of setting objectives for a player that maybe doesn't want to set objectives or explore themselves. The rewards from questing aren't half bad, but it's not an incredibly exciting activity, and once you've done all the different repeatable quests in the area, it starts to become fairly repetitive. There are a variety of story and main city quests that you can do, but again, they aren't too terribly exciting and follow a very basic questing structure. The only win that I can give questing is the PvP quests, which actually are pretty great. Not because the quests themselves are a lot of fun to do, but because of the incentive that it creates for people to go into PvP mode. I think the high risk, high reward playstyle can be quite alluring to some people. And if anything, it helps create hotspots for PvP around the different quest hubs that the PvP quests will send you to. I do again like that the questing system is mandatory. You're not forced to go on any real long quest sprees unless you want to unlock PvP, in which case you have to do a handful of quests to get. Honestly, I'm not even sure Amazon should change questing in the game. If anything, maybe they should add a bigger variety to the pools of repeatable quests, but that's pretty much it. I think that the quests they have definitely serve the intended function that they're supposed to, and focusing story-wise on a main story quest line would probably be a stronger selling point rather than worrying about adding a ton of quests to all the different areas. So let's talk about this game visually. 20 minutes into the review, you guys have seen lots of footage of it already. If you tried the preview yourself, you know how pretty this game is. The world looks absolutely amazing. You can see the trees blowing in the wind. The lighting effects everywhere look absolutely incredible. All of this comes together with amazing surround sound on the environment. You can hear the deer in the woods in front of you. You can hear someone walking up behind you. You can hear which direction the gunshot came from. All the sounds are so well localized to where they're coming from. It creates a real sense of actually being in the world. Monster and character animations are really well done and look very smooth. I'm a big fan of how combat looks visually in this game. The only thing that fell short visually for me was the fact that you couldn't customize your character very much on creation. There were incredibly limited customized options, but as you level your character up, you get a whole bunch of different gear and weapons that you can customize your character with. That being said, being able to have more appearance change options at the beginning would be really nice. I hope that they add more, and I hope that it's not added to a vanity shop and they charge you real money for it. Now, the world building is really amazing in this game. I love that Amazon was not afraid to use a lot of height when they put the world together. The different areas have a vastly different look and feel to them. And despite your character not really being able to jump, they are able to climb things very effectively. So this allowed you to actually have quite a bit of freedom to explore a lot of the different parts of the world and even climb up on top of most of the mountains in the game. All in all, I found this game to be very visually appealing, and I also figured out how to do some fun little animations as well. Now, unfortunately, I was unable to make it to endgame because I just didn't have enough time. I did spend a lot of time PvPing, and you don't get any experience for killing players, so yeah, if I had spent more time not PvPing and just grinding, perhaps I could have got closer. But for the sake of the video, I think that endgame content will focus in PvE around the corruption, either sieges on forts or the corruptions that spawn in the higher level zones, and then there will be a lot of endgame PvP focus in the fort battles, and I also think that open world will be a very attractive endgame activity for people too. As it sits right now, it looks like there are some endgame activities in this game, but I do believe that Amazon will need to add some more. I think in the future with expansions, etc., that is exactly what we'll see. Now the big question, is New World worth it? Well, let's start with the cons. There's not a lot of endgame as it seems right now. It looks like that's going to be something that we'll have to wait for the future to see Amazon add some more of. The questing system in this game is fairly weak and quite repetitive. And then finally, I would also love to see some more PvP incentives and rewards just to get people flagging up and playing more open world PvP. And there are some times when you can find your character stuck in terrain and the game really starts to look like an alpha game. It's not too terribly often, and there is an option in the game menu that will unstuck you from where you are. I hope that they keep this function in the game for the live release as well. But on the flip side, it is a very unique feeling MMO. The mix of Dark Souls combat with the addition of shooter definitely is something that I've never explored in this kind of game before, and I don't think I'm alone in thinking that there is definitely a potential for this audience. The combat in general is a lot of fun, and open world PvP is one of the most fun activities that I've had in an MMO in quite some time. With that being the early focus of this game, until recently Amazon decided to shift more towards a PvE aspect, I still think that they can salvage the PvP side of this game to be quite a fun part of the game, especially by adding more incentives to just be in PvP mode in general. I really think that this game has the potential to be something quite special in the MMO genre that we have not seen before. Playing this game has left me just wanting to play it more. I can't wait for this game to come out in spring. And to be totally honest, if this game had come out the way it is right now, I think it would still be worth that $40 box price for this very cool experience. So there you go, guys, my honest review of New World. I would recommend it. I would love to hear what you guys think. Have you guys been in the alpha, and did you enjoy your experience there? What did you do, and what did you like, and what did you not like? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you guys enjoyed this video and you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I normally create ESO content, but when New World comes out, I will definitely be doing some New World content as well. If you guys want to keep up to date with my shenanigans, you can always give me a follow on Twitter. If you want to catch a live stream from me, you can always check out my Twitch as well. Check out my website, KristoferESO.com, for all of your Elder Scrolls Online builds needs. I know this is a New World video, but hey, what the heck. And finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers, and they can give you better ping to your favorite games. They're free to try for the first 30 days. There's no credit card to sign up via the link in the description below. And then last but not least, a huge thank you and a huge shout out to all my patrons on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Without you, I wouldn't be able to keep it going. And I really hope you guys are enjoying some of the New World content and looking forward to some more in the future. Thank you everybody for tuning in and watching today. And as always, have a great night, everyone. And I'll see you next time.